Hello, TCI family. Hello, Jonathan's Refuge, and all of our supporters and followers. We love you guys so much. My name is Jonathan Brown. Most call me Rev. I go by JB. Let's get into our message tonight. We're going to be discussing a continuation of the life of David, who was a king, the second king of a country that is called Israel. And it's called The Road to Zion 2.0. Because my father, my birth dad, and my adopted dad spent their lives studying and teaching these lessons about how to get from the beginning of our life to the end of it and how to do it in the way that it's properly supposed to be. And there are patterns that we can follow, and the life of David is one of the great patterns. There are many patterns to follow, but David's example is an amazing one. So let's jump right into it. We last left off, David became the king of a state called Judah. Judah is one of 12 states that make up the country of Israel. And the king at the time was named King Saul, and he was the leader of all 12 tribes. And of course, when everything went bad, right, he died eventually. And so we're going to kind of walk through the timeline with you. So we're going to start a quick recap. Number one, between the ages of 16 and 17, some say as early as 13, some say 15. But I think it was more 16, but around 16 years of age. He was anointed to be the king after Saul. He was the guy who defeated the giant Goliath, killed him with a sling. After he killed Goliath, he served King Saul, and he served in the court of King Saul. And what's interesting is he served King Saul, and of course, and this is all in the beginning, he then became an outlaw, and he became a fugitive from the kingdom of Israel. So he was living in throughout the 12 states. That'd be like saying I live in America, and I'm in one of the 48 states here, right? And I'm hiding out. I'm supposed to be the president of America someday, right? God told me I'm going to be the president. Right now I'm in a cave hiding with 400 outlaws, fugitives, wanted, dead or alive. And so for 13 years, that's the state that David was in. So he worked in another man's field for the first 17 years of his life. And then he goes into the service of the king, and he's serving again yet another person, the king, but he's still serving in another man's field. So we learn this process that we all have to start off, and we work in another man's job, another man's dream, another man's field. We show ourselves worthy with the little that we are given. We become the king in the field with the poo, right? And then we go through the stages, and the stages are very important. See, David, this beginning stage, the 13 years of being an outlaw, was actually training. Because during that phase, he had 400 outlaws, strong men, that came to him to say, hey, we want you to be our leader. We heard you're an outlaw. Now, David could have chosen right then to say, you know what? The king wants to come after me? Okay, let's raid the lands. Let's just rape and pillage his kingdom. Is that what he did? No, actually, he continued to bring honor to his king by not killing him on the multiple times that he had a chance to kill him. He always showed his love and support for his king and his country, and he never tried to say, look, God said I'm supposed to be king. I'm taking it. I'm tired of it. He could have chose the bad and feed the evil, and instead he became training. So he learned how to reign and rule over 400. It wasn't 400 men. It's 400 strong men, and that means they had families. So you got families that are out there. So now he's got 400 families that he is taking care of. So he went from field of sheep to a cave of humans. And again, still lots of poo, still lots of mess from all the crap that humans do in their life. And he's learning to rule and reign as a king to the next level. And then what happens is Saul dies. Now, the state of Judah said, hey, we want David as our king. So the state of Judah came to him and said, be our king. So then, he's 30 years old now. So now we're 30, he becomes king of Judah, and his headquarters, his capital city, is the city of Hebron. That's where we left off last week. This was his capital. Now here's what's interesting. He learned to master being a leader on a larger scale. Why didn't he just go straight to being the king of all 12 tribes? Because he wasn't ready. And that's why there was a split. They had many leaders. because David wasn't the clear leader at the time. He was not. The other 11 tribes said, nope, we're going to follow Saul. They put up a puppet king up there in the other city, and that was the ruler of those tribes. And now, of course, it only lasted for the 7.5 years until David finally was asked to be king over all of Israel. But again, he's now 30 years old, and he's learning how to master one state. That's like becoming governor. Before you want to become a president, a lot of times it's best to become a governor, because the governor, that duty, the office, the executive office of a governor of a state is exactly the president's job in office. It's just a massive scale, where a state is still a huge undertaking, but it's just one state. Take that times all 50 states and all of our territories and the lands that we still control and own that are ours, all of our ports, all of our bases. It's just magnitude. So that's the example. So Hebron is like saying you're the governor of Washington State. And so for 7.5 years, he stayed as governor of that state, king of the state. And then once he realized the same tools he used with the sheep, they worked with the men in the caves of Adullam. So why not try them here? And they worked really well. And so he fine-tuned his leadership skills on the whole state. Now he's got a state that he oversees as the king. 7.5 years. He could have gone after the title as king of all Jerusalem, all Israel. He could have done that, but he knew he wasn't ready. He was listening to his mentors. So that is when he became ready for the big show. See, so many people out there were always wanting the big show. I remember when I first was told by some very powerful men and women in my life that were very powerful and influential in this country, how I was going to be the next big thing. And what's interesting is it all happened, but I actually wasn't ready. It wasn't timing. So the timing wasn't right. And so things took off. And when you're successful, it takes off. And then like David, right? He's anointed to be king. He goes off to the field. He kills Goliath, victory. He becomes the king's right-hand guy. He literally is singing the king to sleep at night when he has bad dreams with his harp. He was such an amazing player and psalmist, which meant a musician. He was an accomplished musician with hundreds of songs to his name. And then he became the warrior king, or I shouldn't say king. He became the warrior for the king. And he does all of that. And it's all going good. And then all of a sudden he wakes up and the king wants to kill him because he's jealous. Okay. So now David's learning these great leadership lessons through his whole life. And so he's now spending the next 7.5 years in Hebron. And this is what's interesting. At 37.5 years old, he was anointed king of all 12 tribes. Saul died. His 2 sons were dead. And David was ready for the country of Israel to unite as one country and rule and reign in Jerusalem, in the city of Zion, upon that beautiful hill. Now, the interesting thing is he would have not succeeded, and it would have been all bad had he tried to force it earlier. Sometimes in our life, we're wondering, "Wow, I'm ready. Are you really? Are you seasoned? Are you really listening to mentors and working hard to learn those things that your boss is telling you need to have down?" I was just mentoring a young man today in my organization, and I was explaining to him, you got to be ready for the big show. You see, David didn't just show up at the situation with Goliath and say, "Oh, I could kill this thing, watch," and then try. No, he had already gone out into the field, and as a boy, they teach you to put a rock on top of a rock. So one about the size of softball. Put it on a big rock, and then you go 10 feet back, and you practice until you can hit that every time with your little pebble. Then you back up 10 more feet, same thing until every time, 30 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet. Then you get so good and so powerful, your rock, it smashes the other rock and goes boom. And so you became the warrior. Not when the time was there, but way before. You see, no one sees when I go out and I walk at night. No one sees me when I'm in the gym by myself. Nobody knows that I'm doing that. I am out there because it's what you do in your winter that pays off in the summer. This summer, when you see the hot body on the beach, tell them congratulations for their work in the winter. And then you'll see the one who's kind of covering it all up, right? That's because they didn't care in the winter to work on their shape for the summer. See, there's seasons in our life, and we have to remember that. And that's what David's life is showing us, that there are seasons. And then at 70 years of age, David finally dies. 40 years he was the king. 7.5 of that was the king of Judah, and then the remaining 32.5 was over the entire country of Israel. Dying at 70, by the way, is twice the age of the average person back then. They all died in their early 30s. So he was twice the age of everyone, including his contemporary leaders of other countries. He surpassed them, and he led his country not only into a massive peacetime at the end of his reign, but he also made such an impact in creating peace that it lasted for the entire reign of his son, King Solomon. And we'll get into that. So David never had the full picture, okay? So as we talked a few seconds ago, recapping, he didn't have the full picture of what God was doing. He didn't have a full picture of what the whole timeline that I just ran to you and went through with you. So when he's back here at 16 and 17 and he's told you're going to be king, he doesn't see that, oh, by the way, that means you're going to go through living hell until you're 30 years of age. You're going to be tried to be murdered and killed, and you're an outlaw and wanted, even though you've done nothing but serve your country and your king faithfully. So when you're told you're going to be king someday, be prepared. You're about to go through a lot of trials and tribulations. You want to be CEO of a company? You know, people all the time tell me, man, I want to be the chairman and CEO like you. I want to be the big boss, the big dog. Whoa, really? Because let me tell you, if I take my shirt off, I can show you stab wounds upon stab wounds. There are people who have stabbed me and continue to stab me and will always continue to stab you, because that's what happens when you're in a position of authority as a leader. People want to tear you down. People want to take what you got. And so you have to learn to go through these things. And not only do you go through them, but let's look at what David did. He used my system. And I say he used my system. My system wasn't around back then. But my system was created because of David. So that's why I use that term, my system. But it's called FPAR. Faith, plan, action. Repeat until success. Revise if needed, and repeat until success. Revise if needed, repeat until success. And that's what David did. David used my FPAR system to go ahead. He didn't have the full picture. He only had a glimpse of each part of his life as he was going through it. See, we need faith that we're going to get to where we're going. We need to have a plan. And you use your mentors and your leadership team. I use my advisors, my board of directors, men and women that are younger and older, and get wisdom from all sides of things. I get every aspect before I decide to make a decision. Once I do have my full plan and I know that we need to do this and this, then I take action. And then I repeat until success. Now, if it doesn't work, then I need to revise my plan, maybe go around the mountain, over, through, blow it up, lots of options, revise the plan, and then repeat it until you succeed. And then if you need to revise, repeat it until succeed. And David did this from the day he was a youth until the day he died at 70. Have faith. You will be king. That's what he had. He knew that he'd be king someday. He didn't care when. He didn't try to push it upon himself. I'm supposed to be the boss of this company, Dad, someday. I remember those conversations. I was a young, foolish boy. I'm supposed to pastor this church. I'm the big swinging, you know what. I'm the man. Well, you might have the big tree to swing around, but my friend, like David, you weren't ready, and neither was I. And so once I found out there's this life, a plan, and it's called a journey, and you need to understand where you're at in the journey. By the way, just because I'm 47 doesn't mean I'm seasoned. If I didn't listen to all the advice, if I didn't learn from my mistakes, then I'm a fool at 47. So you can be 60, and you can be 80, and you can be a complete idiot unless you learn from your mistakes. And you would take advice from a multitude of counselors and then make that best decision. So that's the first thing. David knew he would be king someday. Do you know what you're going to be? I'm going to be an NBA player. If you know that, that's great. Now we got to take all the plans and the actions and keep working at it. Leaders are raised progressively over time. It is like a refining process. When you think of gold, you take raw ore, it's like a rock, and you take that ore, this is an ore right here, and on the outside it looks a little rough, right? And then when you cut it open, there's ore in there. There's quartz. There's minerals. And gold's the same way. It's very similar. You'll pick up a rock, and in the rock there's little streams and rivers of gold that flow through it, and flakes and chunks. Or it's a solid piece. It looks, but it's not. It's not pure, okay? So to purify, you know what we have to do? We have to go to the fire. Woo, doggy, let me tell you about the fire. The fire is no fun. The fire is where you are refined. Now, when you are refined and you come out of the purge of that fire, of that forge, now you are pure. Man, you're beautiful. You're shining. You're there. Think of David, 30 years of age. It's at that time, he probably only had 2 to 5 years left, according to the common history of people who lived. Not David. David knew he was still supposed to be king of all of Jerusalem, so he kept working faithfully. He was very faithful. He didn't have the whole plan, but he knew he had to be faithful with what he was given, and he had one state to take care of, so he worked diligently with what God gave him. Now, here's what's interesting. After you go through the forging process, they keep refining us. It's a never-ending process. David was being refined until the day he died. Have you ever heard of an actor, first time out, right? That we all say, oh my gosh, did you see that movie? Yeah, that guy was an amazing actor. Who is he? I've never heard of him. This guy came out of nowhere. Wow, they gave him $20 million. I can't believe that. That's amazing. Why doesn't that happen to me? What about Michael Jordan, right? Everyone in the draft, where did this kid come from? I'll tell you where he came from. He came from the refinery. He came from the forge. He was pressure cooking himself. He was not a great basketball player. His coach actually said he'll never play varsity. He doesn't even know how to play basketball. So Jordan said, no, put me back in the fire. Put me back in the furnace. Forge me. I want to be purged. I want to be the purest, greatest athlete in the NBA. Last time I checked, to get an autographed basketball by that man runs you about 8 to 12 grand. Okay? So I'm assuming that most would agree he did it and accomplished it. Like David, going through that process of being forged. The actor, you didn't just get that big shot. Jim Carrey just didn't get the big shot. He was out there working, taking commercials, doing stupid, hey, if you take this pill, it'll make you feel better. That's what all these actors do. They take the cruddy stuff, they put in their time, because you have to start at the bottom and work your way up. Is there a story out there where an actor just walked down the street with nothing, like they were never wanting to be an actor, and some director goes, oh, you're perfect for the film, you'll be my superstar? Have we ever heard of those? Sure. Very few. The majority of all stars in athletes, movies, Wall Street, it's not an overnight process. It wasn't walking down the street, you're the perfect fit for the CEO, you'll be great, you'll take us to the next level. No. They want to see the person who's faithful at their church, and they don't get paid to take care of the parking lot. But every week, that parking lot looks amazing. Now, listen, you're going, what's a parking lot got to do with this? I'm going to take you back to a church that I was at, my daddy, one of our churches. And I remember this man who was so faithful with the parking lot. He was just happy that someone gave him a job because he was a recovering alcoholic. And he'd been sober for like 5 years, and no one would trust him because for almost 25 years of this guy's life, he was a drunk. So can you blame anybody? No. So what did he do? Like David, he said, that's okay. I don't care if it takes 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I will be ready when the time comes. And every year and every day and every week, he was there faithful to that little job of taking care of that church's parking lot. Now, what's interesting is one of the guest speakers that came to Daddy's church was a very powerful and very rich man. He was so impressed with the way that parking lot was taken care of. He'd never seen a country church so... His exact words were, I thought I pulled into like a cathedral. I was like impressed. Now, why do I tell you that? This man was ready for the big show like David, and it took years. That preacher, that very wealthy person, changed that man's life. When my father told him what that man dreamed of doing someday, and how he dreamed of doing it, and how he's got the plan to do it, and how he's waiting for God to show him the person to partner with, that man wrote the check. And that person's a mega millionaire to this day. And one of the kindest people I know. They travel to foreign countries, third world countries where they have nothing, and spend their money and resources helping others. So, are you the one complaining? Why do I got to be in this parking lot taking care of a stupid country church parking lot? Well, you're the idiot who's never going to learn, and you'll be 60, 70, 80 years old going, this life sucks. No, you do. Sorry, let's get real. When I say my life sucks, here's what I do. I go in the mirror and I say it because my mentors trained me on this. And I look directly in my eyes and I say, and I can't say it. I can't say life sucks because life doesn't suck. Life's great. Who sucks? I do. And I know you're like, does a preacher say that? Absolutely, this one does. My life sucked because I sucked. I stunk. I was and then life. It's not life. It's you. It's me. But you don't understand. I was raped. So what? So was I. What are you going to do about it? Are we going to cry about that? Are we going to, oh my God, the rest of my life? Hell no. It's done. Process it. Get therapy on it. Put it behind you. Use it as a stepping stool to go forward. There's nothing you cannot overcome. But let's continue on David's life. So, if we're faithful in the little, then we will be entrusted with greater responsibilities. That's the lesson we're learning. To whom much is given, Jesse,
much is required.
Much is required. See, people all the time say, man, could I come on your company and I want to work with one of your firms and I want to do what your wife's doing and I want to do this. Really? Because to whom much is given, much is required. I have an exhausted life in some respects. It never ceases to end from the second that phone rings in the morning to the responsibility of our companies and our boards and the people we work with. And you just keep going. So, is it easy? No. To whom much is given, much is required. Now, I have a question for you, and we're going to wrap this up in a few minutes. What season are you in? What season of the life are you in? I want you to think about this. You have fall, winter, spring, summer. 4 seasons. Your life symbolizes spring when you're born. You're in the spring of your life. And let's say by the time you're 18 to 25, somewhere in that range, your springtime ends, and you now go into a season of summer. You've started a career. You maybe got married, got a partner, have a house, or you're renting and saving to buy that house. Now all of a sudden you're being blessed, and you own your home, and you have 2 kids, and you got 2.5 baths, and you got a little travel trailer, or maybe a small boat, and you guys enjoying life. You're prospering. You're getting promoted at work. That's summertime. Fall is reaping the harvest of all your hard work from the spring and summer. So now you're at that end of your age towards the season time. Maybe the last 10, 15, 20 years of your life could be. Some it's different. So you need to figure it out. Fall is when everything's coming, your harvest. And now you're looking at someone going, man, I'm so jealous of them. They just get everything. Yeah, they get everything because they planned it. They went out in the spring, and while everyone was playing and partying and having fun, they were faithful with the little that they had. And they planted that seed, and they gestated, they watered, they weeded. They were faithful with that little tiny field. And then it grew to a stronger field, into a bigger field, into more, into more, into more, until they got what you see and what you're jealous of, and you're always saying, why don't I get it? Because you won't take the time to be faithful in another man's field, not getting paid while you're learning all these lessons. And then when the big show happens, you're ready. You see, you weren't born a star. No one's born a star. Picasso, the great painters, they didn't pop out and go, ha-ha, and start painting. No, they did the same stuff that you and me did. They took their finger and they shoved it in some color and, ooh, look at this. I know how to finger paint. And then they got better and better and better. And then the Picassos and all of the Michelangelos become the greats because they painted a lot. They worked at it. They refined themselves. So what season are you in? Fall, winter, spring, or summer? Life is a journey. This is what we learned. Here's our recap. Life is a journey. It's not a destination. It starts here. It ends over here. And there's a process. The question is, does your life just stay stagnant and stale? Or is it one that goes downward and just dismal? Or is it a life that goes up and thrives? No matter where you're at, if you're down here in the dismal and you're towards the end, look at the guy who created Kentucky Fried Chicken, 60 some odd years old, when he decided to stop living off of only a couple $100s a month from his retirement and create KFC and become a billionaire, a gazillionaire. So you can change your actions and change your environment, change your life at any time. You are never too old to start this process. So, life is a journey. Enjoy the journey. Stop focusing on the end. When I'm a millionaire, I'll be good. Stop it. If I did that, I never would have made millions. If I did that, I never would have accomplished the things I've accomplished. I had to embrace and love the journey. That includes the people when you lose friends who die. That's the pain. That's the sorrow. All of it is the journey, and we have to embrace that. Face your opportunities with courage. I say opportunities, you might call it a problem or you might call it a challenge. That's another word, people. I like that one. I don't like problems. I never have problems. I just have opportunities. and I face them with courage. David faced every obstacle with courage. The king was trying to kill him with courage. He did not want to hurt the king when he could have. He had courage. So let's make sure we have courage in the face of our opportunities. Process criticism. You're going to get criticized. You know how many people have told me, you shouldn't swear. People are not going to get truly help from you if you're like that. Funny thing is, all those people who swear, they don't get help from people like Billy Graham. I love Billy Graham. I'm a huge supporter of Billy Graham. I think he was one of the greatest men that walked our earth. He was amazing. Great lessons. But he would never be able to even speak 1 ounce into the life of the people I speak to. The people I speak to, the gangsters, the thugs, the criminals, the sex offenders, the murderers, the rapists, the gangsters, the guy who actually is an executioner for the cartel. These are the people that I have this gift to speak to. And they listen to me. So take your criticism and process it. Some criticism is good. I have a young man sitting right here across from me. He is our director of IT, which is hilarious. I won't tell everybody that he's asleep right now because he's passed out. But he'll be watching this later, so it'll be really funny. So we end it with processing our criticism, learning how to take that criticism, and some of it's good, and then some of it we need to just throw off and say, whoop, that's gone. Move on. Seek God for direction. Seek your Creator for your direction. Communication is not just to your people. It's communicating with the divine and asking for the divine, what am I supposed to do with my life? Before you say, what's my career? Why don't you ask the Creator what your career should be? Why don't you seek that in your heart and you'll see it? And God will communicate through you, through your mentors, and then, and only when you know what you're supposed to do, then you pull the trigger. That's how David did it every time. But one of the things he also did is he was kind to people. David had this ability. He was a strong leader. He was a warrior. He was an accomplished musician. He was king. He was a man of steel. Yes, all that's true. But he was kind to people. He actually took the son of Jonathan, his best friend, who died along the side of his father, King Saul. And Mephibosheth was a cripple. And he was hiding because he knew David would probably kill him. David not only didn't kill him, he took the heir to the throne, the blood heir, and now he's the king and says, you'll be like my son at the king's court. You will sit at my table. And when the king said you sat at his table, what that meant was you received a paycheck. You received an annual sum of money to take care of your life. That's how David, he was kind to people. He helped people. And the final stage, legacy. What's the legacy you're leaving? When you die, what do you want people to remember about you? I don't know about you, but I think about that quite often so that I take actions and steps to leave a positive legacy. See, my legacy for the first 20 years was violence, evil, darkness, beast. That Irish beast, that's my legacy. Broken bones, hurt, death, destruction. I decided to change that and to leave a legacy of love to all people. And when I die, I hope the people that are there say, that boy, he sure loved everybody. You ever notice that? He didn't like them all, but he sure loved them all. So our legacy. David ushered in peacetime for his kingdom. Not only for his, it was so powerful that he set peacetime for his son's kingdom. Now, that's where he transitions the leadership. He chose the son to take over the king's throne. And it was not the person it should have been. You remember when Saul was crowned king by Israel? Technically, his oldest son, Jonathan, should have been the next king. So that's who was, the order was supposed to go to him. If you look at David, when he was picked to be king, what happened, right? The prophet came to his dad's house and said, send in your sons. So Jesse, the father, sent all 7 of his oldest sons in order of the oldest first and then down in chronological age. And he said none of these were them. So it was David's oldest brother that should have been picked if we're going off of order. But see, God doesn't see what you and me see on the outside. God sees what's on this inside. He sees your heart. He sees all that truthfulness that's in you or all the lies and filth. He sees it all. It's this beautiful creator. It's not a bad thing. It's there to help us say, I shouldn't be that evil, dark guy. I need to be the nice, kind, gentle person. So David helped usher that in for not just his generation, but the next generation. So you say, I've done great with my life. Good for you. What are you setting up right now for the next generation? I'm at the end of my life. I have only 5 or 6 years left to live. Great. What are you doing right now? Because when you die, your kingdom's chopped up, and I've seen it happen. I've done over 1,000 funerals, and I have watched how the families treat their families' estates, right? The kingdom that they're supposed to inherit. It's a bloody hell. Guess what? It's okay if you properly plan how you transfer that legacy to the next generation, like David did. So, we have that final now. David is in the city of Jerusalem, and he is ruling and reigning. We are going to wrap it all up with the story of David. We have not even delved into it. This is a longer video than normal. I never usually go 30 minutes, but I never go more. So I'm wrapping it up. I love you guys. Thank you for following the life of David. Read the 1st and 2nd Samuel, the books that talk about David's life. Study the man himself. And you'll hear many more lessons from me on this man in my life, as I've been preaching my whole life so far on this man. I hope you've enjoyed the Road to Zion 2.0, seeing how we can apply it to our own lives. God loves you guys, so do I. You know the drill. Live positive.